Good night and welcome to the Living Well Show, where we have holistic conversations that inspire healing, hope, and transformation with your hosts, Dr. Albert and Shanique Tompkins. Good night, everyone. I am Shanique,
Hi, I am Dr. Albert.
and we are welcoming you into the last Monday session of the month. We are quickly ending November and full speed ahead for December. So we know that we just celebrated Thanksgiving in the United States, and we're quickly approaching Christmas season. And so we wanted to talk a bit about depression during the holidays and how to recognize that in your loved ones. This is a tough time for many, and many of us just smile and bear through it, but we want you to know that you don't have to. So tonight we have an exciting guest, and Dr. Albert, go ahead and introduce.
I sure will. As Shanique stated, we just had Thanksgiving, and maybe you were around your relatives and they were maybe low energy or maybe not themselves. And so we want to find out, how do we recognize depression in our loved ones during this holiday season? And today we have a special guest, Miss Sharon Stewart, today, who's going to help us with that. And Miss Sharon Stewart, she graduated from Vanderbilt University with her Master's of Science degree in nursing. She practiced as a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner in private practice. Ms. Stewart has experience in behavioral health, home health, community mental health, and hospice, and also the criminal justice system. In her office via telehealth, she provides medication management and psychotherapies to clients across the lifespan. Ms. Stewart is a psychiatric therapist to clients different aspects of mental health disorders such as depression, panic disorders, attention deficit disorders, bipolar, and many different DSM-5 disorders. And she also has a great interest in the criminalization of mental health complex traumas resulting in chemical imbalances and problems with learning. So she has a vast experience in this area, and we are so glad she's with us today. Go ahead and greet the people, Miss Sharon Stewart.
Good night, everybody. How is everyone? I'm thankful to be here and I'm excited to have this conversation with my friends about mental health issues, especially during the holiday season. A lot of us don't recognize symptoms of depression. People think that we're supposed to just be sad and crying all the time, but actually, you can just be a little irritated or easily annoyed or offended.
Mm,
Things
mm,
like that also signify symptoms of depression. So I'm
wow.
glad to be here tonight.
We're so glad to have you, and we appreciate you taking time out because I know you're very busy, especially during this time. And so, just right away, tell us about your journey into this field. What sparked your interest in mental health?
There are a couple of reasons actually why I decided to get into mental health. First and foremost, because I was raised in a military family. My father served in the Air Force for nearly 23 years. He made a career
Mm,
out of it.
mhm,
And I remember he served both in the Korean and Vietnam Wars. And I
mm,
remember my mom saying that once he returned home, he wasn't the same man.
mm,
So I just remember things that have happened, since his return, with alcoholism and domestic violence issues and whatnot because of the PTSD and exposure to Agent Orange.
mm. Wow.
And what people really don't realize is that he had PTSD, yes, but he wasn't the only one. We
Mm.
also had PTSD
Oh, wow.
because of what he experienced and how he returned home.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow, that's an interesting story.
Wow. So that led you into the study of mental health issues and how to be a help for your community. So, what are some of the challenges that you see in your office on a daily basis with individuals struggling in these areas?
The challenges that I have are the stigma that's associated with mental health, especially in our community.
Yeah.
it's like taboo. It's like if you go see someone in mental health, you must be crazy. And to
Mm.
be honest with you, I've never met a crazy person a day in my life. Uh,
Right, right. That's good.
you know, people have traumas and past experiences that have caused them to have chemical imbalances or problems with communicating effectively with others, things of
Mm.
that nature, children of divorce or someone that has been sexually abused, things of that nature. It's not all bipolar and depression.
Mm.
Circumstances and life situations that have caused these stressors for people to internalize these stressors and
Mm.
just manifest themselves emotionally and physically sometimes.
Okay. So you just talked about the different stressors. Could you go in that a little bit more? Because many people not understand that there are different types of stressors that could spark, maybe a chemical imbalance or issue that you have struggling with. So talk about that a little bit more. What kind of stresses would they present with?
Mhm. Well, for example, if someone is a victim of sexual abuse,
Mm.
sometimes those symptoms can manifest themselves emotionally,
Wow.
and they may become detached and isolate themselves. They may dissociate, uh,
Mm.
do things to make them feel that they're not in the current situation or whatever the tragedy is, so they
Hmm.
won't experience it again. They
Wow.
will just in their minds go to another place or just kind of check out, as some people say. Some of the stressors with victims of sexual abuse also include physical symptoms. You
Okay.
know, I know, for example, that both men and women may experience issues in the pelvic region, bladder problems, interstitial cystitis, bladder cancer,
Mm.
vaginitis, recurring urinary tract infections.
Wow.
That
Wow.
comes from undealt with either unforgiveness or self guilt or self blame.
Wow. Wow.
They manifest themselves physically sometimes. And,
Wow.
and unforgiveness I've seen people, I've worked hospice and I've seen people battling cancer due to unforgiveness. And then when they make
Mm.
the choice to forgive, I've actually seen cancer shrink without
Wow.
chemotherapy or radiation. I've seen years added to people's lives through
Okay.
forgiveness. So some
Wow.
of the emotions that we carry when we internalize them,
Hmm.
they just manifest themselves, and we just don't know how they're going to pop up.
Okay.
You
Right.
Okay.
know, a lot of people, even during this season, I've started this group last month, a support group for grief, and
Hmm.
I call it 37172, which is our zip code. 37172. Let's talk about it. Let's pray about it.
Okay.
Because grief can show up later. Everyone doesn't cry when someone passes.
Mm.
People get angry. Some people are quiet. Some people isolate. People do all sorts of things. Some people go out and spend money they don't have. Some
Mm.
people, they develop addictions and get in risky behaviors.
Hmm.
Uh, I've seen hypersexuality and addictions to pornography, addictions to drugs, increase in alcoholism, even subject to gun violence
Mm.
from
Mm.
unprocessed grief.
Wow.
Hmm.
Wow. 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 Yeah, that's something that I can relate with because last year I lost my mother and I was grieving for about a year, a solid year. And it took me a while to actually admit that. And so you kind of touched on it a little bit in terms of forgiveness and that being part of the healing process. Could you talk about how important the spiritual aspect of the treatment plan and allowing people to actually accept the spiritual part of it to get healed?
It's extremely important, Dr. Tompkins. Forgiveness is essential to life as far as
Mm,
I'm concerned.
yeah.
And the spiritual aspect of it, I, actually, let me rephrase this. I believe that the spiritual aspect is extremely important as far as mental health is concerned. I
Mm,
don't think that you can successfully treat it
mm,
without acknowledging it and showing awareness about it because we're
mm.
spirit beings first.
Yeah.
And so everything is not treated with medication
Mm,
or even some psychotherapies.
mm,
Sometimes a person can be so wounded and so difficult to reach from whatever complex trauma that they've experienced. And it
mm.
has now manifested into a spiritual problem.
Good.
For example, I also worked in the criminal justice system
Mm-hmm.
and I worked with sex offender treatment programs.
Mm,
And what I had learned was that everyone, 100% across the board, every man that I talked to that had abused someone sexually, they actually were sexually abused in some shape, form, or fashion
wow.
themselves.
100%. Wow.
100% across the board.
That's a phenomenal stat. Wow.
It really 100% across the board. Everyone that I taught or came in contact with, they were sexually abused as well. Now, I don't know what makes the other half, the people that don't perpetuate sexual abuse, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what their resilience is,
Mm,
but it's something that's spectacular and
mm.
that causes them not to offend because they've been offended, you know.
Right. Right.
Uh-huh. So
Okay.
it has to be a spiritual aspect. I believe in treating the totality of a person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I actually went into private practice for myself because
Okay.
in community mental health, I was seeing 20 people in a day and you really can't herd people like cattle. You really just can't do that.
Right.
If you
Yeah,
want
I
to
agree.
be an effective practitioner, you
Yeah.
know. At my clinic, I have therapists and other nurse practitioners and the psychiatric nurse practitioners that I work with. We actually spend anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour or maybe longer with each client.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's unheard of.
I know it because the money is in giving the medication management and seeing somebody every 10 to 15 minutes.
That's it. That's it.
But there
Yeah.
actually are some people out here that actually want to see people healed, set
Wow.
free, and delivered, you
Wow.
know, and you
Wow.
can't do that in 10 minutes.
You
That's
can't.
true.
Exactly.
True,
You
true.
cannot.
Can't
My
do it.
goodness.
Wow. So this is powerful because you have a practice where you're able to really make an impact in someone's life. And we all don't have that in our areas, but one thing we can do is at least try to recognize some of the symptoms that our loved ones or family or friends may be experiencing during this time. So can you give us some of the key points or tell us how to recognize if a loved one is showing some of those undercover symptoms of depression or grief during the holidays?
Okay, yes. Most of them actually are very subtle.
Hmm.
And as I said earlier, it doesn't always involve just having sadness.
Hmm.
It can involve isolating oneself, sleeping a lot,
Hmm.
sleeping too little, being angry, easily annoyed or irritated. just real snappy at people, snappy at the grocery clerk at the store,
Mm.
and they haven't done anything to you, but you're angry about something, you know, things
Mm.
that you may used to have enjoyed doing, you don't want to do them anymore.
Mm.
And with suicidality, you have to worry about or look out for people giving things away.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mm,
that's good.
yeah,
Well,
giving.
you're going more into that. What do you mean giving things away? What should we look for in that area? Because that's pretty big, especially with suicide rates on the rise.
People give away personal things that mean a lot to them. Like a guitarist may decide to give his guitar away to a close friend that they
Mm-hmm.
know that enjoys music. I think you should have this because I know you enjoy music. Because
Mm.
one of the scariest things about suicide is that typically when people get the courage to do it, and you have to be courageous to do something like that,
Yeah.
to make that call on your life, they seem settled with it and satisfied with what they have decided to do. So they
Yeah.
typically, this is why suicide always usually comes as a surprise, because they go about their day like a
Mm-hmm.
normal day. If they
Yeah.
work, they go to work, they come home, they eat supper, and they make their plan, they make their plans way ahead of time. It's
Mm-hmm.
a thought out process.
Yeah.
And they seem to have peace with that decision.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They might have peace with the decision, but of course we don't.
Right.
Right.
And that's
Right.
why we're always shocked, like, I can't believe you did that. I just saw her yesterday, you know.
Mm.
And she was very happy playing with the kids in the park, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's those subtle cues that we really must zone into during this time. With all of our busyness, we have to stop and be intuitive about those that are around us. Wow.
Yes, we do. We have to be extremely mindful of others, especially at this time of the year,
Yeah.
because someone has lost a loved one, or a spouse or a parent or a child, and they just feel really lonely being without that person. You know, they're connected to them, they share physical DNA, spiritual DNA, and they feel like a part of them is gone or missing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
so most people don't want to talk about it. Most people, well, not most people, but some people, they hide in their work. They may work a lot of overtime
Yeah.
just so they don't have to deal with the uncomfortableness of facing their pain for the loss of their loved one. And also at this time of the year, especially if they're just now going through the holidays for the first time
Mm-hmm.
without their loved one, they are really, really afraid of going through the holidays. They don't know what it's going to be like for the
Mm-hmm.
first time without their loved ones. And they may make impulsive decisions or irrational decisions because they don't know how to deal with that feeling. People don't understand that it's okay to not be okay sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
and you'll have a roller coaster of emotions. You know, you'll feel numb, then
Mm-hmm.
you'll feel extreme pain in just the gut of your stomach and your belly. And then
Mm.
you may cry, and then you may be angry and get mad and throw things. And
Mm-hmm.
you're like, why am I acting like this? But
Yeah.
it's really okay. And
Mm-hmm.
people, we just don't effectively communicate grief.
Mm.
And sometimes we feel like we need to be there for that person to help
Okay.
that person. But what do we do? What do we say?
Right.
And all you have to do is, if you have a loved one that is having these emotions and struggling with grief or just sadness or holiday blues, all you have to do is just be there for them.
Wow.
You really don't have to say anything.
That's
But
good.
a lot of times we don't like silence,
Right.
Yeah.
and we think we should say something to make them feel better. But actually, it's like bones are flying out of our mouths. We're just saying off the wall things, you know. I
Hmm.
remember I lost my dad last year too to COVID,
Wow.
Mm.
and multiple family members and friends.
Wow.
And so I, as a professional, I didn't get upset when someone said to me, "Well, he's in a better place."
Mm.
Oh, he lived to be 88 years old. He got a good life, you know.
Mm. Mm.
But that does nothing to address how I'm feeling right now. And sometimes I
Right.
would just smile and just say, be polite and say thank you.
Wow.
But I didn't want to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Didn't want to
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah. I
Just
understand.
be there. Just take someone out to lunch or something, you know, or just give them a call. Say, hey, I was just thinking about you. Just want
Okay.
to speak to you.
Yeah.
Uh, you don't have to try to make someone feel better, or try to make yourself feel comfortable with the situation.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah.
Just
Yeah. Yeah.
just be there and just listen.
Right. So you have some great tips because you're right. A lot of times we feel we need to do something to make the situation better, but most times just being present, the ministry of presence is sometimes all they need. And so then the next part is, so let's say we recognize, some things in them, we kind of talk to them. At what point do you think maybe we should contact a professional? Is there like a sign or something that we could say, okay, you know what, maybe I can't handle this. I need to call someone like yourself. What would that be?
It would be when that person feels or you see that they're stuck in some shape, form, or fashion,
Okay.
and it is affecting their activities of daily living.
ADLs, yeah.
When we haven't had a bath in 3 weeks,
Okay.
when we've missed multiple days of work,
Mm.
you know, most companies give a certain time for grieving, and I hated that they base it on the rankings of the family. If it's a
Right.
spouse, you get a long time. If it's a parent, you get a little bit of a long time. If it's a child, you get a real long time. But if it's
Right.
a cousin that raised you, you get 2 days.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, that's typically not very good. But if someone loses their job because of missed days,
Right.
you know, someone's lost a lot of weight, someone's gained a lot of weight, you
Okay.
know.
Okay.
Uh, Usually those are kind of subtle, but that does happen. And then if somebody tells you that they need help and you don't feel comfortable enough, you don't have to be qualified. You just have to be there for that person. But if you feel that it's out of your means or out of your capacity to help, then that's when you should suggest someone to get help.
Okay. Okay.
And so, how do we, in our efforts to help someone, we notice some of the symptoms, we want to make recommendations. Hey, you need to go and see a professional. How do we help package language to help them overcome the stigma of going to a mental health professional?
Okay. So we have to go. Oh my goodness. Oh, my lovely, lovely brothers and sisters.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now, crying is not a sign of weakness.
Mm.
The shortest verse in the Bible, Jesus wept. And we all know that he was not a punk. and
Right.
neither are you
Right. Right.
because you're experiencing some tearfulness or sadness.
Mm,
We have to debunk the myths associated with our faith.
mm,
That
mm.
is like one of the biggest challenges. You know, yes, you pray, okay, and you're not depressed just because you haven't prayed enough,
Mm, mm. That's
okay.
good.
You know, you're not depressed because you missed 2 weeks of church,
Right.
okay.
Help us.
Right.
Right. You know, I mean, it is our faith is has just been so strong for hundreds of years.
Wow.
And God has just truly been our source and our sustainer.
Hmm.
And we think that outside of him coming down to earth on a cloud with a mighty rushing wind, you know, wind gusts behind him with his air
Right.
blowing,
Right.
it's not God.
Right. Right. Exactly.
But people need to realize that God created us and none of us are alike. And that's by design because we're interdependent upon one another.
That's
We
right.
all need each other.
Yeah.
I got something you need, you got something I need.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why effective communication is just so important.
Mm.
But being depressed, having mental illness doesn't mean that you are cursed by God.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. You
Hmm.
know, it's no different from your brain is an organ,
Right.
just like your heart.
That's right.
And if your cardiac enzymes, your heart enzymes, if they're elevated, if they're off some kind of way, the doctor's like, the left side of your heart is kind of enlarged and you're secreting too much of this cardiac enzyme. So I'm going to put you on a blood pressure medication. I'm going to give you metoprolol
Mm,
to help it a more perfect rhythm since you're not getting that hormone or enzyme like you should.
mm,
The same thing for our brain. If we
hmm,
don't have enough serotonin or norepinephrine or dopamine,
mm,
or if we have too much, having too much can make you hallucinate. Having too
mm.
little can make you depressed.
Wow.
Your dopamine is your happy hormone, enzyme, neurotransmitter, in different specialties. We call it hormones, enzymes, or neurotransmitters.
Hmm.
They're all the same.
Yeah.
They're all like hormones, okay? And so if we're at a deficit or if we're at too much, it will affect our mood.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's okay to take a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. I take Prozac.
Gotcha.
And I'm for Prozac. I'm really quiet and still. A little too still. And maybe
Mm,
sleep too much.
yeah.
Eat too much,
Yep.
and have some sadness. And I'm okay with that. And I need to be because I got stuff I need to do.
Right. That's good. That's good. That's good. And so we appreciate that. That's great information. You have really blessed us with so much to think about, contemplate regarding mental health, especially during this season. And so let us know, how can people get in contact with you at Stewart Mental Health?
Absolutely. My practice is located in Springfield, Tennessee
Okay.
at 105 Fifth Avenue West, Suite 103. Again, it's
Awesome.
Springfield, Tennessee, 20 minutes outside of Nashville, Tennessee. And the zip code is 37172. My
Awesome.
phone number at the office is 615-384-7111. My email address is Stewart, Stewart, mental health at Comcast.net.
And I heard you mention earlier that you have telehealth appointments. Do you only work with those in Tennessee, or are you open to outside of the area as well?
Open to the outside areas as well.
Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome.
Uh,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Well, COVID was horrible.
Mm,
Telehealth existed before, but it
right.
was mainly birthed from COVID. And
Mm,
it is the best thing because I'm able to reach people in rural areas
mm, mm,
and from different states too. Hmm.
Right. There's some good that came out of this pandemic, and that is one of the things where
Yes.
people may have been apprehensive to doing a telehealth or a virtual. They've become comfortable and found that they even like that better than going into the
Yes, they
office because it
do.
doesn't seem like I'm going for therapy, or, it helps to lessen that stigma of going for counsel for mental health. So that's
Hmm.
awesome. So whether
Yeah.
you are in the state of Tennessee or outside, you can access the wisdom and professional expertise in counseling of Stewart Mental Health. And we will drop that information into the chat box. Sharon, you have been awesome on tonight. I feel like I've been in a therapy session. Your voice is so calming and
right.
soothing, and
Exactly.
Thank
Exactly.
so
you.
we appreciate you, and I am sure that our viewing audience also appreciates your wisdom. And if you pulled something out of today's session, whether it's yourself or someone that you love or a friend that you notice is going through a hard time, point them to this episode, share the link with them. If you got something out of it that will help you to be better, do better, and live better, let us know if you don't mind sharing. We do this to bring information to the community and to help us all to come up and do better and live a better life, especially during this time of the pandemic. So I don't have anything else. Do you have anything else?
No, I want to say thank you again, Miss Sharon Stewart.
Oh, it
Appreciate
was
you.
my pleasure. My
Yes,
pleasure.
and we'll certainly have you back again at some point in time because I can tell you have so much more to share with us. But we
Yes.
appreciate it, and we thank you all for joining us on today on the Living Well Show. Hope you see you again next week, right here on the Living Well Show. God bless and have a great night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.